Welcome back to another episode of In the Booth. I'm glad you guys can join us, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. It's really important that we get some of our viewership up, and if you guys can really help us out with that, it'd be greatly appreciated. Today we're going to touch on another Italian great, a company that obviously has stood the test of time. Sort of came to fruition in the 60s and produced a lot of great cars over the years that we've all come to love, and probably the manufacturer that's most responsible for what we know as the supercar. Through many years of many different products, they've kind of found their way into a nice place of some of the most exotic cars, as well as very strong performing cars. And a lot of resemblance to a lot of newer manufacturers and sort of the small production numbers and everything that they're going through, companies like Koenigsegg and Pagani. But here today I'm talking about none other than Lamborghini. Now Lamborghini is a brand that's been around again since the 60s, produced some greats like the Countach and the Murcielago and the Gallardo even, and I can even say the Huracan, which is also a very good product. But today we're here to talk about the Lamborghini Diablo. I'm very excited, as the Diablo has always been, to me, my favorite Lamborghini ever designed. Until recently, when I started getting a little bit more into the Lamborghini business, I'd had limited time in the Diablo. So I'm really eager to explain to you guys and talk to you guys about how it drives, show you guys a lot of the interesting bits about the various Diablos that have been produced over the years, and then finally my favorite one, which is the car we're going to be talking about today. The Lamborghini Diablo was first introduced to us in 1990, and it was a 1991 model year car. It was initially designed by Marcello Gandini, who was also the guy who penned the Countach and the Miura, which is arguably the first supercar ever, and so many other great Italian cars in between. The Gandini design initially started in 1985, and it was under that ownership at the time that they wanted to get ready for the car that would be the successor to the Countach. Initial design elements, if you look at them online, you can definitely see the initial of what ended up becoming a very beautiful car. The Gandini design, to me initially though, the original one, it was a little short. It looked old still. It didn't have the element of new that the 90s really needed to bring. The car still very much looked like an 80s car. And then what happened was, as they were going through the clay models, etc., in 1987, Lee Iacocca finally got his dream of buying an Italian car maker, which ended up being Lamborghini. At that point, they were given the design over to their head of design in Chrysler, and Chrysler was able to then take the car and give it the final drawings and sign off, which would be the Diablo that we come to understood in 91 when the car first landed. So very principle. It looked exactly the same, with the exception of a remodeled rear end, which really took away the old styling tail lights. The off-center wheel well was even more pronounced even than in the Countach. It was really trying to accentuate that element of the design. Tom Gale, who was the chief designer at Chrysler, took the initial design, the Gandini design, and he modernized it for the 90s. He cleaned the bumper covers up. He kept the original off-center wheel well for the rear, a Lamborghini trademark, but he kind of hid it a little bit more. If you look at the car from a 3/4 point view, it's still nicely accentuated, but it fits really nice, and you get a beautiful exposure of the rear tire, which just looks so mean and so wide on the road. It's a beautiful touch that he gave the car. From there, he was able to stylize a little bit more of the contoured sides. He gave the car a very, very nice slotted intake over here, down in the lower quarter panels. And altogether, the design just looked a little bit more fluid and a little cleaner. Through the Diablo's production years, there were tremendous amount of variants that were released. Starting with the original two-wheel drive 5.7 liter version, which made, I believe, 475 or 485 horsepower. The car was modern in a lot of ways. The seating position was more usable. The pedal situation was centered a little bit more, but still quite off. And actually you had some headroom finally. So if you're, above 5'8", you can sit in there quite comfortably. It's pretty awesome to see that difference between the Countach and that car. Probably made the car so much more accessible for buyers at the time. As the car started to grow, in 1993, the VT was introduced, and that's variable traction. Basically a viscous coupling, all-wheel drive system was added to the chassis. And then of course, as the car would progress, other variations would come out, such as the SE30, which was introduced in 95. That car was kind of designed to be a little bit of an F50 competition or F40 type competition car. So super lightweight, stripped out carbon interior car. I believe it was actually almost 500 pounds lighter than the girl that we see behind us right now. From there, SV was introduced. Believe it or not, SV at that time would have been the entry-level Diablo. And then of course the VT would be the car that was the one to buy. And of course all these variations brought on new technology. This car finally got power steering. The car finally got ABS. All the things that we've come to know from most German manufacturers, and even a Ferrari at the time was also very much embedded in that technology. And of course, as the years grew on, the car got faster, stronger. In 1999, it got a pretty bold update. And at this point, Audi had already got their grips on the company by purchasing them in 1997. From there, the flush headlight was introduced, and some other changes that would eventually come were already in the works. Leading up to today, or 2001, the final version of the Diablo would be created. And this is the send-off before we would enter the world of the Murcielago. A lot of people say that this car is actually the prototype for the Murcielago. When you look at them underneath, there's a lot of technologies that carried over. There's a lot of engineering and manufacturing traits that carried over. This car really was the test bed. Between 2000 and 2001, about 215 6 liters were produced of just 2,888 total Lamborghini Diablos. That's 10 years where they made only 2,888 cars total. That's the type of production we're talking about. Very, very low. I find it quite comical when you see some of the changes with this particular car, specifically around the engineering, the positioning, and the driving dynamic. I can only imagine when the Germans first sat in the car and felt the pedals completely off-centered and are looking at the frontness of this car and saying, how can we not fit this all in? It doesn't make any sense to me. And of course, some variations were made. And you know what? The Germans were wrong. There wasn't enough room. So if you actually look at a 6 liter versus previous generation Diablo, you'll actually see that this front fender is flared out a little bit more. The wheel is moved out, the front track was widened, so they can then reposition the pedals more inward, more outward, so you're more center with them. So dynamically, when you sit in the car, this car is definitely the best feeling Diablo from that perspective. From there, it got the 6 liter version of the V12, the same V12 that they've been using since the 60s actually. It grew from, I think, 3.5 liters all the way now to 6 liters in this particular car. And my God, does it ever make the difference. When Audi was further producing a lot of new aerodynamics and changes to the car, they really wanted to prepare everybody for the look of the Murcielago. So Lamborghini was finally going to go away from what the Countach sort of started with, its slits and cuts and then all this stuff that would help, you know, exemplify the exoticness of the car. They really wanted to turn it down, make it sleek, get it wider, bigger, but make it more flush and more, I don't know, tough looking maybe. So the introduction of the front end of the 6-liter was kind of the first step. Again, with the flush mounted headlights, the integrated fog lights in the bumper, and then of course these big square intakes. You can feel the Germanness of the design. And you know, realistically, more functional and just a little bit more of the time. You know, it's 2001 and things are obviously changing. So how far can we really get with this 90s design? The car was actually a hit. People loved it. The 6-liter combined with its new look, these beautiful new forged concave one-piece aluminum phone dial wheel, which to me is still probably one of the most beautiful sets of factory wheels I have ever seen. Just incredible. Moving along the side, you can see specifically just after the front door that the slits that were involved in basically every car prior were removed for one gaping intake. Again, another stylization that was going to help prepare the audience for the upcoming Murcielago. One of my favorite details though is as they had to accentuate this front fender here, when it comes down, they were able to build in this beautiful carbon fiber lower side skirt to just pick it up and carry the wideness along the side of the car. My favorite design feature of the 6-liter is that it just gives the car such a race car type look. It looks like it's a GT car of some sort, just with that small detail. Probably my favorite. Towards the rear, things didn't really change too much, except for the surrounds for the rear taillights were finally painted in body color instead of being that typical reflector red. And the exhaust tips were now centered again, preparing us for the upcoming Murcielago. Funny enough, the cars are so similar that the rear section on this particular car is from the Murcielago. So super, super cool detail on how they got together and put this last variation of the Diablo. It's like a send-off basically. The Diablo we have here is probably, well, for me, it is the most special Diablo I think you can buy. Of course, everybody will argue with me. There's SVs, there's the SE30, there's so many different variations. There's GTs and all kinds of other stuff that came in between. But for me, I'm usually a fan of the last car of any generation. And the reason why is because no different than a Formula One driver probably prefers the last car of the season over the first car that he had in the season. Development is all that matters. And when I drive something, I want to drive the best version of it, the strongest, the fastest, the most refined. You know, I just want to have everything the ultimate it can be. I found this car in the US. It's one, of course, the 215 6-liters that were ever produced, and this one is a one of one in Verde Hydra, which is this beautiful forest green metallic paint over a full crema interior. It's also nicely bordered with green piping on the seats. Car is so rich looking. And green on tan, I think from a style perspective and even a, you know, in fashion perspective is always going to be there. It always has been, and it just still takes your breath away when you look at it today. This one originated from Manhattan Motor Cars in 2001. It's got a very, very nice, strong service history. And when it landed finally, I was very, very, very eager to sort of exploit what this car was gonna be like. You know, have I driven Murcielagos? I've driven a ton of them. Have I driven Countaches? I've driven quite a few. And I've driven every other Lamborghini from there up. This guy always evaded me. I was kind of scared too, you know? It's been many times in my life where I drive a car I always loved and ended up hating it. So taking this thing home was a big deal. I spent 2 days in this car. In 2 days, I drove it the way I would drive anything. And I have to say that this car did not disappoint me. The 6-liter, even by today's standards, is strong. Under full load acceleration in first gear, it still wants to rip the rear tires over as that VT system is trying to send that 25% of the torque to the front tires. You smash into second gear and she takes it beautifully. You can drive it so spiritedly. The transmission takes it, everything takes it. And funny enough, the operation of these systems is actually quite light. And I like light operation. I'm not a big fan of a heavy clutch and a heavy shifter. Cruising through the gears and really exercising and pulling the car well over 7,000 RPM, that V12 just sings. And another thing I love about it, which you guys have probably heard me say before, is I love that it's theatrical in a very natural sense. You hear quite a bit of induction under full throttle. The exhaust just loud enough, but no like overrun fake pops and crackles when you come off the throttle. Whatever it's gonna do is just as hot as I got it, and it's about all it wants to give you. Perfect. Of course, you know, trying to play some tunes in there, a little bit of a struggle, as it's still got the original Alpine flip-up deck, which, you know, is limited in its operation, but it did the job. AC blew nice and cold. For a car like this to feel that easy to drive, it's so important to me. And this thing did it so perfectly. Driving around in downtown Toronto, this car actually does have, believe it or not, fully adjustable suspension. And I went through the modes, and obviously I had it in its default level 3. And the car is super malleable. I like using that word because it's the best way to describe a car that doesn't break your back when you're going on crap roads. I love that. It did that really, really well. And from there, it was also very tight at the same time. No creaks and rattles coming from the suspension. It was actually very stout, very tight. Another neat feature about the 01 Diablo is that it's, you know, probably one of the first production road cars to come with a lifter. You know, in the more traditional sense. I know that F40 models could have had it, where a lifting system was all around the car, and haven't really seen it since. And to have it presented in this particular car, super cool. Worked every time as well. As you take in all the touch and feel of the interior of this Diablo, it's so nice. That big, massive carbon fiber center console. It just feels, again, so rich, stout. You have this beautiful carbon inlay on the dash, and all of it with these beautiful little blue strands within the carbon fiber weave. An Audi signature, I believe, as some Audis I've seen in the past have had that. So I really love the influence of Audi in this car. This car is actually basically the first child. It's the marriage, you know, between those two manufacturers to take such a beautiful Italian design, something so timeless, something that I can absolutely guarantee that if it was parked in your garage, every time you open it to have a look amongst all your collection, it is impossible that you're not going to look at this car. It's just too good looking. And then take the engineering prowess of a German manufacturer to improve it, make it better, make it work. And I love a car that works. It's all that matters. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work, all of it means nothing. So today, I stand here humbled by my experience with this car. Another super strong feature of this particular car is its construction. You know, I didn't even really know this when I was venturing into the 6-liter world, how much carbon fiber is actually made or used to build this car. You can see the weave poking through on this hood. You can see it on the engine lid. You can pop it and have a look at the back, and it's all finished in beautiful gloss. The engine surround, absolutely gorgeous. Again, carbon fiber, endless. This rear section over here, also made out of carbon fiber, just helped to really keep the weight in check. I believe that this car weighed in at about 3,600 pounds. Believe it or not that heavy for a car this size, because it is quite large. Just a beautiful, beautiful combination and mixture of two different mentalities when building an automobile. Today, I gotta say, we're very happy to be offering this particular Diablo out of our Pfaff Reserve inventory. It's been a pleasure to have it around. And, you know, I'm sure it's gonna find a home at some point, you know what I mean? But not too much in a rush, because I gotta say, I look forward to having it around a little bit and looking at it and admiring it and sort of just building up on my knowledge of specifically Diablos. It's been a great time to have the car and really sort of use it as an education piece for myself. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you guys enjoyed some of the pictures that we've released online. We are going to try and get the car out onto the town here in Toronto at some point, along with some of our other prime pieces that we have in inventory. So again, just like at the beginning, I really hope you guys are enjoying these programs, and please ensure you like and subscribe to our page. I really appreciate it. Thank you.